Welcome to Bleep Bulimia podcast with guest Dr. Kim Peirano, Doctor of Acupuncture and Chinese Medicine. Hi, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia. And today I have Dr. Kim Peirano, and she is a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. I am so pleased to have you here today because I also know that you've been dealing with people with these eating disorders, and that's really important for this show. So thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is always, how was it that you got into acupuncture and Chinese medicine? What inspired you?
Yeah, so I think my story is kind of a little different than most people's story. Most people have some magical experience with acupuncture and they decide they want to do it. I never did. I recently learned that I have ADHD, and now a lot of my life makes a lot more sense. So I did a lot of different majors in college. I went from television production to business management. I kind of had this idea that at some point I would probably have my own business. Business management turned out to be like very corporate, which was not what I was looking for. I ended up graduating with a bachelor's in sculpture. And I did art for the remainder of my time in undergrad. And then at that point in time, realized like that's probably not something that I'm gonna do as a job. It's very hard to make a living as an artist. And I took a job doing insurance underwriting, which was woefully boring. And at this point in time, it was like the first time I ever had sort of a disposable income. So I had started going to yoga thanks to some guy I met at a music festival where I was like kind of opened to like all of these other things. Um, and I started going to yoga, got really into that. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And then at some point, this chiropractor came and did a talk at the studio. And at that time, he was kind of referring to himself as a naturopath. Like he was not, he was a chiropractor. But I think he was kind of doing functional medicine before we called it functional medicine. And so he gave this talk, and it was all about how all the things in the body are connected to other things. And I was like, that's so fascinating. That feels really right. I ended up working with him for a little while on my own stuff because I had all this weird digestive stuff going on that the doctor couldn't figure out. Um, a lot of lab tests later just determined I was lactose intolerant. So we figured out the bottom of that problem, but I was super like fascinated by this whole thing. I was like, I want to go be a naturopath. Then a naturopath is an ND. It's like a medical doctor with a couple extra classes for natural medicine. And I had an art degree. So like I was not getting into medical school because my degree was in sculpture. And in my search, I had come across acupuncture schools. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. Seems a little bit similar. The herbal medicine aspect of it was really exciting for me. Did a like walk through and consult with the people at the school, and they were like, yeah, you can kind of do everything a naturopath can do except like prescribe medicine. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. I had never had acupuncture, didn't know much about it. And I just like signed up for acupuncture school kind of on a whim. That's ADHD at its finest, I think. And yeah, so I obviously got a treatment like before I actually started school. And then graduated, and my practice kind of like shifted and flowed over the years to different kind of specialties. I started out doing a lot more like cosmetic acupuncture, and was really into that. And then through the pandemic, like we had to close for a little while, and it was like, how do you put an acupuncture practice online? Like that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And like I don't it was interesting because I was really excited about herbs, and then through school got much less excited about herbs. So I don't do a lot of that, which was what a lot of my colleagues were doing, was like online consults. So I wound up doing some more training in hypnotherapy and Jungian based coaching, which is like shadow work and archetypes and things like that, which kind of bridges into some of the Chinese medicine theory a little bit. So I kind of shifted my practice. So now I also offer coaching and hypnotherapy, which we can do in person or online, and then moved more into this like mental health realm of practice where we're looking at stress as like why we're here on this podcast, like eating disorders, like health at every size and intuitive eating were big factors in my life and things that I use in my practice. And so that's sort of the roller coaster that's been my career here.
I'm sitting there listening to you and I'm smiling because very similar. Uh, Started in marketing. Oh gosh, no, like architecture, and then moved on to something else, and then onto marketing, and then accounting, which I'm actually really good at both of those. And I did a business for those both. And then I bought myself an auto repair shop, and then like it was like, it's like,
Amazing.
yeah, that was my ADHD. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have it. I haven't been diagnosed, but to go from one thing to another, and now really I've come to the point where um I just need to slow down. I just need to enjoy life. And that was all when I stopped my bulimia. Um
Mhm.
it was all of a sudden it was about me now, not about making everybody else. Because I think, when you are that performer or the person, and I also started in the arts, by the way, too. So,
Cool.
right. And then I came out and going, where is that going to take me? Um, right. But it's interesting that you're talking about that moving forward to where you found something that was really meaningful to you. And I think that's really important. So you were saying that you have been able to connect with people with eating disorders, or there's so many different terminologies of that.
Mhm.
Uh, so can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's important for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I would say like I think somewhere along the line, somebody like made up a lie that acupuncture helps with weight loss. Um, it's my professional opinion that's an absolute lie. Um, because when we hear that, we think automatically like magic pill, right? It's not
Hmm.
yeah, it does because it helps you sleep better and your digestion better and like your stress levels and all these things. So if you're going down that road, it's going to help you in the long run, but it's not this magic pill thing. So in an acupuncture practice, like we get a lot of people who come in who with that as like an intention. Um, and so where I meet people is usually in this phase where like they're bordering into like binge eating orthorexia type of disorders. Like I don't see a whole lot of anorexia or bulimia in my practice, but sometimes I'm the person they'll see like before getting the help they really need because I'm like that in between person who can kind of like sow some seeds that grow eventually to help somebody like move forward on that process. Um,
And not move into the bulimia stage or the other
totally.
phases. Yes, very
Yeah.
important.
And so
Yes.
like when people approach dieting, right, it's like we have all kinds of society programs and all kinds of stuff that gives us a ton of wrong information and a lot of really harmful things. Um, and I was a, kid who was on Weight Watchers since I was 10, right? So like I've been through the binge eating, like extreme dieting thing for my whole life. And it was kind of when I discovered intuitive eating that like personally, I was like, whoa, like where have we been hiding this research? Like there's so much that's so impactful where you're like, oh, like this is going on a diet to lose weight is like a 98% chance of making you gain more weight than before you started, right? Like that's not an intervention that's successful at all. So where I wind up meeting people is where they're like have this intention and then helping them kind of determine like what's the core of that? Like, is it because you want to be healthier, you want to feel better? Like there's many things we can do to reframe it outside of like, I want to lose 30 pounds. So we start moving into like, what are some lifestyle things we can change to like live a healthier life and have less stress? Um, and then a lot of clients that I do end up working with are the ones who've come and they've been kind of harmed by that like alternative wellness world where there's like,
Yeah.
there's so many scammy things and so many like so much stuff going on. And so kind of helping people reverse out of that so that they're developing more healthy relationships with food and with their bodies. And that's where I see like orthorexia pop in, which is, that fear of like not eating clean food, right? Where we get obsessed with organic only or like only
Mhm.
3 ingredients, like so our like uh window of foods that we allow ourselves to eat gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Mhm.
Um, and so those are a lot of the types of people that I'll see in my practice.
That would be really fearful for me because coming out of bulimia, I don't restrict myself on anything.
Yeah.
So okay, I don't like pizza, but I'll eat it now and again if if we're at work and they order a pizza, then it's kind of
Hmm.
a social thing. I won't restrict myself from being social and eating that piece of pizza, but in general, I mean, if I want a hamburger or whatever, I don't restrict myself because what I found in those 30 years of my bulimia restriction was horrible thing. It triggered. So you say, no, I'm not supposed to have this, and then you have it, and then all of a sudden, okay, one chip. Oh no, the one chip becomes a bag of chips, right? Uh,
Hmm.
because you go, well, I cheated anyway, and then you don't want people to know. So then, of course, that you are addicted to food. So that's where you but I love that, and yeah, they call it disordered eating, eating disorder, whatever the case. But that I don't feel that that restriction is healthy. I really don't.
Yeah.
Quantity and what you were talking about, quantity. I always say Joan Borsensko, that her book was awesome. I wish I had listened to it way before, but I knew and I picked up on it, our sense of hunger. A lot of us have forgotten how to eat slow until, it takes 20 minutes before you know whether you're full. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
what you're eating. And portions and quantity and all of that. I think those are important. But I'm curious as to how acupuncture comes in. So I understand, the basics of that, but
Yeah.
and Chinese medicine, I want to know more about how that would come into play in what I just blabbed on about. It's like,
Totally.
because I can do that. I mean, it's a
Uh,
big thing for me, right? I mean, 30 years.
yeah.
I'm I'm going on 14 years of recovery, and I'm realizing, holy crap, like why did I do that for 30 years? I get it, I know, but how does somebody not know?
Yeah.
How does somebody
Um, And so like Chinese medicine, it's so fun because so much of it operates off of metaphors. So like in
okay.
it, like a really rudimentary one would be like your left knee hurts, we'll treat your right elbow. Um, and so it's like because those two body parts kind of match. And it's like kind of wild how it works. And the research is sort of starting to catch up to like understanding some of this stuff. So like the fascia that connects all of your muscles, like if you have tightness in one area, it might be because there's looseness in another area that's like across your body. So by treating that other part, we actually get an impact on the part that is injured or hurt or whatever it is. So we have this like beautiful landscape of metaphors that we can use to address like literally everything or how we might understand how the body and mind work on a really like basic level. Like acupuncture is going to be super helpful for most people for many things because it helps regulate our nervous system and like bring us out of that fight or flight response,
Mm.
bring you back into that relaxed like present state, bring you back into your body. And if we think about like, so I struggled with like binge eating disorder, and like if you're in the middle of a binge, like you're very far removed from yourself essentially.
Oh,
It's how I
Totally.
experienced it, right?
Yep.
You're just like on autopilot going for
Yep.
it. So we're having that experience of like being more in our body, feeling what it feels like to be more relaxed. And then on this broader range, like one of with how we might address mental health, and the way that I like to look at it is this concept of the five spirits. And we have the five elements. We have like yin and yang, which is that little Tai Chi symbol most people are familiar with. It was drawn all over my sixth grade backpack, like and we use these concepts to like explain literally everything in the world, right? So like daytime is a yang experience and nighttime is yin. And then we have the five elements, which are fire, earth, metal, water, and wood, and they all create each other in this cycle. They all keep each other in balance. Um, and we think of that like whole circle as like each one is the mother of the next element and the child of the one and the grandparent. Like there's so many fun ways you can look at it. And all of us, like at different times in our lives, we might have like one of these elements that's sort of the thing we're working on. Or as like a constitutional thing that's sort of like maybe like your life pattern. So for me personally, like mine is in the fire element, and like the particular flavor is like setting boundaries and like how do I let good things in and keep things that are wrong for me out and stick up for myself. Like that's a common theme for me. Um, what we see that goes really hand in hand with our relationship with food, our relationship with our bodies, our relationship with shame, which is the emotion that shows up a lot here,
Mhm.
um, is the earth element. And the earth element is the spleen and stomach make up the earth element. And they're kind of so we have another metaphor that's like every organ has its own job in a kingdom. So your heart is the emperor, the pericardium is the bodyguard, the spleen is the minister of grain. So it's like how we harvest things, like to harvest stuff that's good for us. And the stomach helps us break things down. Um, and so when we use this as a metaphor, right, it's like we're literally in your body, your stomach is like pumping stomach acid and breaking food down. Your spleen in your literal body doesn't quite work the same way it does in Chinese medicine, but these are like lumped together. So like it's not a literal interpretation. Um, in Chinese medicine, your spleen is thought to like take the nutrients out of that food and like put it in the right places to assimilate and digest. So if we use that as a metaphor for like life, right? This is like how you read an article and your stomach is responsible for like breaking it down into bite-sized pieces so that you can understand it. And the spleen takes that information and goes, okay, we'll use this part. We learned something here and we can throw away the rest of it and send it to where it needs to go. And then on top of all of this, my favorite metaphor for that is the movie Inside Out. Have you seen that movie?
I've heard of it. I have not.
Yeah. I think it's
I don't believe.
Pixar. It's the cartoon one. This girl has like, it's like the inside of her brain. And they just came out with Inside Out 2, which I haven't seen yet, but they're all the little characters are like joy, disgust, sadness, anger, and they're all her emotions. But the way the scene functions is like every little memory comes down this like bowling ball thing, and it's like trapped in a little bowling ball, and then it gets like logged and like put into its right place in her brain so she can like use it for later. So that's like the perfect spleen and stomach. It's like we're having an experience, we're taking it, we're learning from it, and we're putting it somewhere. And so when we don't do that well, we end up worrying a lot, where we like overthink things or chew stuff over too much, which is also an element of the earth element. Like we have worry, overthinking, and shame, which show up here. Um, and then our next like system is the five spirits, which is a really nice system how we would understand the psyche and the mind. And so in Chinese medicine, it's not like just you have a spirit, like we think in Western culture, like your soul or your spirit, right? Um, in Chinese medicine, there's five, and each of them are connected with a element as well. And so we have the Shen and Hun, which like together are kind of like your soul, like the Western version of that. It's like how you have insights and compassion for things and um, like plan and take action. Your Yi, which is connected to the earth element, which I'll talk about in a minute. Your Po, which is the metal element, which is like your soma, your somatic memory, like how we store emotional experiences in our body. And then the Jur, which is connected with the kidneys. It's sort of like how we go, how we can like trust in the universe to take care of us is kind of like part of that piece. And it's that interconnectedness between everybody. So the Yi is the kind of the center point of this whole thing. And I use this example when I teach this class is like the Shen is like the the billionaire who like gets the idea. Maybe it's not a billionaire, but it's like the idea to like build an apartment building or something. And the Hun is who like it's the architect who draws up the plans. And the Yi is the banker that like signs off the loan for you to have the money to do this. So the Yi is about like setting intention and holding it through. And then the Po is the like foreman on the job. So we're like, that's how we create something in our lives. And the Yi is a center point that helps like keep us like connected to like where we really want to go, like our true self, and also like to the earth where we like actualize things. And so every different spirit has different like childhood experiences and traumas and different types of things that will impact it a lot. And then we'll wind up with difficulties. And they're always like chicken or egg situations where it's like, you know, do you have this problem because you have a problem with that spirit, or does that spirit have a problem because you had a problem with this other symptom? Like, so there's no way to
first, right?
track it back. Yeah. And so disordered eating and eating disorders are linked to the Yi spirit. And so we'll have, and then the childhood experience of like growing up in a home where like maybe a lot of focus was placed on what you looked like, right? Like you always have to be prim and proper, or like thinness is the beauty ideal, or like eat all your food but never get fat, where we get these like conflicting messages from our parents. So those all go into having an issue here. And so then we can see this broader picture of how that shows up in the world. It's not simply just the food, right? It's never just that one piece. And what I notice, like when like working in this way, like one of the most profound like links that I've made is how, so like also connected with the Yi is like the idea of codependency. So it's like people pleasing, codependency, giving up yourself to please everybody else, to make sure everybody else is okay. And these things are like often super linked, right? And what I notice is like where we can connect eating to this whole picture, right? Is like, and I was the kid who was on Weight Watchers at 10 years old. So this was like ingrained the whole time. And then a thing I struggled with a lot is that when we go on a diet, when we're like dieting, trying to lose weight, trying to change our body, restricting food, whatever it is, we have this idea. Well, first of all, it requires that we ignore our own personal needs, right?
Yes.
To like stick to 1,000 calories a day, like I have to totally disconnect from my hunger and fullness cues because it'd be impossible to do it otherwise. So I have to totally disconnect from my own personal needs. But why am I doing that? It's because of the outcome that I think I'm getting. So like for me to be attractive and loved, I have to abandon my own personal needs to stick to this diet to create this effect. So therefore, like abandoning my own needs gives me the results that I desire. And then that transmutes across everything, right? It goes outside of just like food and body to like oh, if I want a relationship with somebody, I have to abandon myself and abandon my own needs to create the thing I desire.
Yes,
Um,
that's very, very well stated, by the way. Yeah,
thanks. I had
really,
like
seriously.
epiphany one day and I was like, dude,
Yeah,
like all track
relationship, you're
that.
right. The relationship is, if you actually speak to that, like if you look at it, it's relationship with pretty well everything, right? It's relationship with your food, relationship with the human, relationship um with your job and your coworkers and everything.
Totally.
It's all encompassing. Um, I remember I used to always think, oh my gosh, I'm so annoying. And I may not have been, but I always thought that I was an annoying person. And I have no idea why. I can't
Yeah,
tell you why. Now I really don't care. If I annoy you and you find me annoying, that's on you, not me. Like,
not for
but that
me.
was one of my insecurities.
Yeah.
Man. And I carried that for many, many, many years. Yeah.
Yeah, and it always shows up in like weird ways too.
Right.
My thing is like I always feel like I'm in trouble.
Oh, that too.
Yeah.
If a boss calls you into his office, first thing you think is, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah.
Like I've got a job now. They call me into the office and they're giving me accolades. And I'm going, I've never had this before. It's like going to the principal's office as a kid, right? You
Totally.
always think it's going to be negative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
weird. Weird. And I'm not the only one. I know I've spoken to other people. I thought I was weird. I thought I was weird. And I'm thinking, thank God I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's people who sit there. They go, are you mad at me? No. Like, I didn't do anything. Like, I'm maybe not in a really great mood today, but it's got nothing to do with you. But people
Totally.
take things personally, particularly intuitive people, I would imagine, right? Intuitive people will feel the other person's feelings and take them upon themselves and think it might be them that they're feeling it about when quite often it's got nothing to do with that person.
Right. And sometimes like I think what often sets that up too is like not necessarily always the like disconnection with yourself, but like a some sort of a lack of personal boundaries or like structure around it, where like and if we bring it back to the Chinese element thing, like part of that earth element is like sympathy. And we differentiate sympathy from empathy. Like empathy would be the virtue of that element, where if it's functioning in its like best way, we are able to be empathetic. And empathy is really like I'm holding my own space, like and holding my boundaries and allowing you to have your experience and being able to understand it or like connect with it. Whereas sympathy is like you have your experience and now I'm like sucked and wrapped into it. And I'm feeling it, and I'm now dysregulated because you're dysregulated, where we really like absorb that kind of stuff.
Like that
So
you actually explain the difference between the two, because a lot of people don't really understand the difference between empathy and sympathy.
yeah, we
Yeah.
use them pretty interchangeably, and like
Yeah, we
not
do.
always.
No, they're
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
totally.
So, uh, tell us a little bit more about your practice. How do you, is there anything you want to share with us? I mean, I know it's acupuncture and the medicine. You spoke to us about all the different elements. So if I came into you, to meet with you and said, I need your help. So how would you come towards a client and explain? So I tell you I've got bulimia, which thank God I don't anymore after 14 years, but just let's say somebody comes in, what would you say to them?
Yeah. Well, obviously it's like so highly specific because everything depends on that specific
I
person.
know.
Um, a lot of what we're gonna do is like determine what our goals are. Like I'm probably gonna find out like how what other treatments you're doing and like what does the whole picture look like so that I can help you and like how can I help you or how do you feel like it should go? Perhaps you're not so sure, so we're going to talk about like what's possible, right? And that might be to just help regulate your system because you're embarking on the road to recovery, and like that can be stressful, right? You're doing things you've never done before, and you're facing a lot of these triggers in a bigger way. So we're supporting that whole process. Like I would never really think of myself as your sole provider. We're gonna like work in tandem with the team of people and the other things that you're doing to help support that whole process. And that's where like I love acupuncture specifically is like if we're doing like talk therapy or other treatments, like working on our mental health picture, like all of this stuff, a lot of, and I love that like the mental health field is like moving in this direction now, like with more somatic practices,
Mhm.
because like we can talk all day and never move the needle on how we feel about something, but a lot of times it has to be like moved through our body so that we can
Mm.
really reconnect. And so that's a lot of the work that we'll do is like, well, we can do it in-person acupuncture treatment, but like with my coaching and stuff as well, like a lot of what we're going to do is like some somatic exercises to help you like be more connected with your body. Um, like work through the emotions that come up when we have those triggering experiences or when we relapse or whatever shows up, so that we can keep moving forward. Um, what also like if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, acupuncture, like this sounds really cool and like something that could benefit me, like very important to like find somebody in your area who's like versed in this. Um, Things I would look for is would be like intuitive eating help at every size, like somebody who advertises that they like work with eating disorders, because a lot of, unfortunately, what we learn in acupuncture schools, like really polarizing information around nutrition. Um, I think like ancient China, like the fat phobia is real and it like goes through all of the medicine too. So I remember buying a book and it was like Ancient Secrets to Weight Loss in Chinese Medicine. And it was like eat 12 walnuts a day and something else. And I was like, I will die if I did this diet. It was like so extreme. Um, so there's definitely like, we want to find practitioners who are really aware about this specific topic because not everybody is. Um,
Mm.
yeah, and so a lot of like how we'll work, is like figuring out what your goals are. In person, we're doing acupuncture just to like help with that system regulation. Obviously, any other like things that come up, right? If you're in pain or other things, we can, with acupuncture is so cool because we don't have to do like just one thing at a time. Um, and a lot of what I will do is like working with um, helping you see things in a new way, which is often like using that lens of the five elements or five spirits or some of this other, um, we can draw a lot out of the meridians and the points that we use in this kind of way, which helps, I think, like unravel some places where we might be stuck, where like this is a thing you're chewing on for a while and working with, and then we hear it in a different way or like with different words, and it helps us have that like epiphany to like let something go or to think about it or change our mindset around it. Um,
I
yeah.
love that. And I love the word epiphany, by the way. It's one of my favorite words in the whole entire vocabulary. It
Right.
really is. I just think it's so beautiful. So if anyone was trying to find you, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my website is lionsheartwellness.com. You can learn all kinds of things on there. That's a beefy website. And if you wanted to schedule an appointment, so I work in person in Oakland, California, and I also work online. So I do coaching and hypnotherapy online, which is also like everything's always like very custom tailored to you and to what you're working on and how we want it to show up. But I offer free discovery calls for that, which is where we can meet each other and chat about what you're wanting to work on, make sure that like we're a good fit and the modalities are a good fit for you, and like go forward from there. So all of those, to schedule anything, you can click any of those book now buttons on my website. Um,
Beautiful.
And I have an Instagram also, which is just at Lions Heart Wellness, which I rarely post on.
I know I tend to do that too. Uh, I love Instagram though,
Comes
and
in
people
waves.
do watch it, right? But I do. I'm getting better at it. I was doing really well, and then I kind of slowed down, but I'm doing better now.
Same.
You will be on my Instagram. To my
Cool.
listeners, as you know, I post on my website, bleepbulimia.com, if you want to go and listen there. Also, obviously, on any platform. And if you want to see beautiful Dr. Kim in person, because I know that I'm very visual, she will be also on my YouTube station on Bleep Bulimia as well. Uh, and I really appreciate you being here and taking your time. Really seriously, my guests mean a lot to me. I know that my listeners, every one of them, they're all different. So I know that there's somebody out there that will connect with them. And I really think it's important for them to hear that they do have help. There are different ways of recovery, and find the one that's right for you. And that's really important. So thank you so much for being here today.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care. Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.